Imagine building a fortune from nothing, every dollar earned with sweat and scars, all for the daughter you swore to protect, only to watch it crumble in a single night. What if the man she loved, the one you trusted, was plotting to steal millions right under your nose? Picture the sting of betrayal cutting deeper than any knife, as lies unravel and the city you called home turns against you. Will a father's love be enough to fight a storm of greed and deceit? Hold your breath, this Chicago tale of loyalty and vengeance will leave you questioning who you can trust. Welcome to RevengeX, where electrifying stories of betrayal and triumph set your soul ablaze. We're thrilled to have you join our community of viewers who celebrate unyielding resilience and fierce courage. Hit that subscribe button to never miss a heart-pounding tale, and it'd be incredible if you smashed the like button, shared this video, or dropped a comment with the time and city or country you're watching from. Your likes, shares, and heartfelt comments are the greatest spiritual gift, the fuel that keeps this channel burning bright. Now, buckle up for a story that'll hit you right in the feels. Let's dive in. My name is Samuel Sam Whitaker, a 62-year-old widower who built a fortune from nothing but sweat and calloused hands. Born in the heart of Chicago's South Side, I clawed my way up from a greasy auto shop to a real estate empire worth millions, all to give my daughter, Emily, a life I never had. My hands, scarred from years of wrench turning, now sign contracts for skyscrapers, but they still carry the weight of promises made to my late wife Clara to protect our little girl. I'm no Saint Gruff, stubborn, maybe too proud, but everything I've done was for Emily. So when her wedding day arrived, a lavish affair at the Gilded Drake Hotel, I thought it was the pinnacle of my sacrifices. Instead, it became the stage for a betrayal that shattered my world, a knife twisted by the man she swore to love. The Drake's grand ballroom glittered under chandeliers, a sea of crystal and gold that screamed money. 500 guests, Chicago's elite, my business partners, and old friends from the neighborhood filled the room, their laughter mingling with the clink of champagne flutes. I stood at the head table, my tailored suit tight against shoulders that had carried more than just wealth. Emily, radiant in her mother's altered lace gown, glowed like the sun. Her fiancé, Nathan Caldwell, a slick 30-year-old investment banker, stood beside her, his smile polished as the marble floor. I'd never trusted him, his eyes were too sharp, his charm too rehearsed, but Emily loved him, and that was enough. Or so I thought. As I moved to sit, my hand reached for the chair. A heavy oak piece carved with roses, a nod to Clara's favorite flower. Before I could settle, Nathan's hand shot out, yanking it away with a flourish. My body crashed to the floor, a thunderous crack silencing the string quartet. Pain seared through my hip, but it was nothing compared to the fire of humiliation that burned in my chest. Laughter erupted, sharp and cruel, like shards of glass raining down. Nathan loomed above me, his voice dripping venom. "Your place, old man, is on the floor where you belong." His words sliced deeper than the fall. Each syllable, a betrayal not just of me, but of everything I'd built for Emily. The crowd's laughter grew, egged on by Nathan's smirk, but a few gasps cut through. My old friend Tommy Russo, a loyal mechanic who'd worked in my first shop, stared in horror, his fists clenched. I lay there, the cold marble biting into my palms, my heart pounding with a mix of rage and shame. Every memory of Emily, her tiny hand in mine as we walked through Grant Park, her laughter in our old garage as I taught her to change a tire flashed behind my eyes. I'd given her everything. A penthouse education, a trust fund worth $10 million, a legacy meant to shield her. Yet here I was, sprawled before Chicago's elite, mocked by the man she chose. My mind screamed to stand, to swing at Nathan's smug face, but my body froze, torn between pride and restraint. What would Clara say? Would she beg me to fight, or to hold steady for our daughter's sake? Then came the first shock. From the crowd, a voice low, trembling, but unmistakable, cut through the haze. "Sam, is that you?" It was Edward Caldwell, Nathan's father, a man I hadn't seen in decades. His boots, heavy and deliberate, echoed across the marble as he pushed through the guests. His face drained of color, his eyes wide with recognition. "You're the man who pulled me from that fire in Nam," he whispered, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. The room stilled, the laughter dying like a snuffed flame. Edward, a decorated veteran turned corporate lawyer, owed me his life a debt forged in the jungles of Vietnam when I dragged him from a burning chopper under gunfire. His words were a grenade, detonating the fragile illusion of Nathan's dominance. But the betrayal deepened. Nathan's best man, Connor Hayes, a slick hedge fund bro with a sneer to match, leaned toward the head table, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. "Told you, Nate. The old man's just a washed-up grease monkey with too much money. Should have cut him out of the deal. My blood ran cold. The deal was no secret to me anymore, a scheme I'd uncovered days before, where Nathan planned to siphon half of Emily's trust fund, $5 million, into a shady offshore account. I'd kept quiet, hoping Emily would see his true colors without my interference. Now, Connor's words confirmed it. Nathan wasn't just cruel. He was a thief, plotting to betray my daughter's future. The room spun as another shock hit. Emily's maid of honor, Rachel Nguyen, a childhood friend I'd always trusted, stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "Sam, I have to tell you something," she said, her voice shaking. "Nathan tried to bribe me last week, offered me $50,000 to keep quiet about his business plan for Emily's money." The crowd gasped, heads whipping toward Nathan, who stumbled back, his charm cracking like cheap glass. Rachel, loyal to Emily since grade school, had been my daughter's rock. Her confession was a blade, cutting through Nathan's facade and exposing his greed to the world. My heart churned, a storm of grief and fury. I'd built an empire to protect Emily, poured millions into her dreams, only to watch her fiancé, a man I'd welcomed into my home, try to steal it all while mocking me as a relic. The betrayal wasn't just Nathan's. It was the sting of realizing Emily might still love him, might defend him even now. My chest tightened, torn between the urge to expose his lies and the fear of breaking her heart. I pushed myself up, my hands trembling not from pain, but from the weight of a father's love clashing with a father's rage. The marble was cold, but my resolve was fire. As I stood, Emily rushed to me, her bouquet abandoned, her eyes wild with shame and confusion. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she sobbed, gripping my arm. I wanted to scream that Nathan didn't deserve her, that he'd planned to betray her for millions, but I held back, my voice steady. "I'm fine, sweetheart." Across the room, Tommy stood, his eyes burning with loyalty, ready to back me up. But Nathan's mother, Lillian Caldwell, a cold socialite who'd always looked down on me, hissed to her friends, "Samuel's just embarrassing himself. He doesn't belong here." Her words were another dagger, a reminder that this betrayal wasn't just Nathan's. It was a conspiracy of those who saw me as less, despite my wealth. The drama swelled as Edward stepped closer, his voice booming now. "This man saved my life, and you, Nathan, dare to humiliate him?" The crowd turned, whispers of hero and disgrace rippling through. Nathan's face crumpled, his plot unraveling under his father's gaze. I stood taller, my suit creased, but my dignity intact. Knowing the truth was my weapon. Yet inside, I was breaking. How could my daughter's love blind her to a man who'd betray us both for millions? The chandelier light flickered, the music dead, and in that moment, I wasn't just a rich man or a father. I was a warrior, betrayed but unbowed, ready to fight for my daughter's soul. The chandelier light flickered like a dying star, casting jagged shadows across the Drake Hotel's ballroom. I stood, my hands still tingling from the cold marble, Emily's grip on my arm a lifeline in the chaos. Edward's words, his revelation that I'd saved his life in Vietnam, hung heavy, a thunderclap that had silenced the crowd. But the storm was far from over. Nathan's face, pale as ash, twitched with panic, his polished mask shattered. The guests, Chicago's glittering elite, shifted in their seats, their whispers now a buzzing hive of shock and judgment. I could feel their eyes on me, not as the fallen fool Nathan had painted, but as something more, a man with a past forged in fire. Yet, inside, my heart churned, torn between pride and a grief so sharp it cut deeper than Nathan's betrayal. How had my daughter's love led us here? To this moment where truth and lies collided like freight trains. Nathan staggered back, his chair clattering to the floor, a pathetic echo of his earlier stunt. "You don't get it, old man," he spat, his voice low and raw, dripping with the kind of street venom you hear in Chicago's back alleys. "You're just a washed-up grease monkey who got lucky with some property deals. You think you're some war hero? You're nothing but a has-been, dragging your daughter down with you." His words were a slap, crude and vicious, meant to bury me in the dirt of my own past. The crowd gasped, some clutching their pearls, others leaning forward, hungry for the drama. My chest tightened, the sting of his insults mingling with the ache of knowing Emily still stood by this snake, her eyes flickering between us, torn. Then came the first shock, a blade from the shadows. Tommy Russo, my old mechanic friend, stepped forward, his weathered face hard as steel. "Shut your mouth, Caldwell," he growled, his South Side accent thick with loyalty. "Sam built a life for Emily while you were still sucking on silver spoons. You want to talk trash? Try it with someone who ain't afraid to knock your teeth out." Tommy's fists were clenched, his loyalty a beacon in the haze of betrayal. But before Nathan could retort, another voice sliced through a woman's sharp and cold. It was Vanessa Pierce, Nathan's cousin, a high-powered attorney with a reputation for ruthlessness. She rose from her table, her designer dress glinting like armor. "Oh please, Tommy," she sneered. "Sam's a charity case, clinging to his war stories to feel relevant. Nathan's right. Emily deserves better than her daddy's outdated dreams." The room erupted in murmurs, the betrayal deepening like a wound torn open. Vanessa's words weren't just cruel. They were a calculated strike, revealing a conspiracy I hadn't seen coming. I'd met her at a family dinner months ago, where she'd smiled and toasted my success. Now I saw it her loyalty wasn't to Emily or even family, but to Nathan's schemes. My mind reeled, piecing together fragments. Hushed calls I'd overheard between her and Nathan, mentions of moving assets and cutting out the old man. They'd been plotting together, aiming to strip Emily's $10 million trust fund, while painting me as a relic to justify their theft. The betrayal wasn't just Nathan's, it was a family affair. A web of greed spun behind my daughter's back. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of rage and sorrow. I'd spent decades building an empire, not for glory, but to shield Emily from the world's sharp edges. Every skyscraper deal, every late night poring over contracts was for her. Now, Nathan and Vanessa were dismantling it, using my love for her as a weapon. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet, I stood still, my face a mask of calm, because losing control would mean losing Emily. Inside, I was drowning. How could I protect her when she might still choose him, blind to the millions he planned to steal? Another shock hit, this one from an unexpected ally. Maria Lopez, the wedding planner and a neutral figure I'd hired for her meticulous reputation, stepped forward, her clipboard trembling in her hands. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said, her voice cracking but firm. "Nathan tried to pay me off yesterday $200,000 to doctor the guest list and keep Sam away from the head table. Said it was better for optics if the old man stayed out of sight." The crowd's gasps were deafening, a tidal wave of outrage. Maria's eyes met mine, filled with guilt for her silence until now. "I'm sorry, Sam. I should have told you sooner." Her confession was a lifeline, proof that not everyone had turned against me. But it also deepened the wound, another layer of betrayal, another person Nathan had tried to buy. Nathan's face twisted, his street bravado crumbling. "Lies," he shouted, pointing at Maria. "She's just a nobody trying to stir up trouble." But the room wasn't buying it. Guests whispered, their phones already buzzing with texts, spreading the scandal like wildfire. Vanessa tried to salvage it, her voice silky but desperate. "Let's not ruin Emily's day with this nonsense. Sam, you're blowing this out of proportion." Her words were a snake's hiss, but they only fueled my resolve. I turned to Edward, whose eyes burned with shame for his son. "You raised him," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Did you teach him to steal from the daughter of the man who saved you?" Edward's shoulders slumped, his silence a confession. The room held its breath, waiting for the next blow, and it came, swift and brutal. Rachel Nguyen, Emily's loyal maid of honor, pulled out her phone, her hands shaking. "I recorded it," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Nathan bragging to Connor last night about how he'd secure the bag Emily's trust fund. Said he'd have her sign it over before the honeymoon, then ditch her if she got in the way." She hit play, and Nathan's voice filled the room, smug and cold. $5 million's just the start. The old man's too dumb to notice, and Emily's too in love to care. The recording was a dagger, each word piercing deeper than the last. Emily's sob broke the silence, her face crumpling as the truth hit her like a freight train. My heart shattered, not just for me, but for her. I'd fought wars, survived Clara's death, built a fortune from nothing, but nothing prepared me for this, watching my daughter's world collapse under the weight of a love turned poison. I wanted to pull her close, to shield her from the pain, but I also wanted to roar, to expose every lie Nathan and Vanessa had spun. The conflict tore at me, protect her heart, or destroy her illusion? I chose silence, letting the truth do the work, but inside I was screaming. The betrayal wasn't just the millions they'd planned to steal. It was the theft of Emily's trust, her dreams, her belief in love. The drama peaked as Tommy grabbed Nathan by the collar, his voice a low growl. "You're done, punk. You don't get to play king in Sam's house." Vanessa shrieked, lunging to pull Tommy back, but Edward stepped between them, his voice booming. "Enough, Nathan. You've disgraced us all." The crowd erupted, some shouting, others filming, the scandal now a wildfire no one could contain. Emily clung to me, her tears soaking my suit, and I felt her heart breaking against mine. I stood tall, my scarred hands steady, but inside, I was a father, torn apart, betrayed by a man I'd trusted with my daughter, surrounded by vipers, yet anchored by the love I'd sworn to Clara I'd never let falter. The ballroom was a battlefield now, and I knew this was only the beginning. The ballroom chandeliers dimmed as the crowd's roar faded into a tense hum, like the city holding its breath after a gunshot. Emily's tears soaked my suit, her sobs a quiet storm against my chest. I stood firm, my scarred hands steadying her, but inside, I was a wreck, rage and sorrow clawing at each other, tearing me apart. Nathan's recorded confession still echoed, his cold voice bragging about stealing $5 million from my daughter's trust fund. A betrayal that wasn't just greed, but a theft of her heart. The Drake Hotel, once a glittering palace, now felt like a cage, trapping us in a spectacle of lies and shattered promises. Edward's condemnation of his son hung in the air, a verdict that shifted the room's gravity. But the battle wasn't over. The truth had cracked Nathan's facade, but the war for Emily's soul was just beginning, and I felt the weight of every choice I'd made to protect her, pressing down like a skyscraper on my shoulders. Nathan lurched forward, his face a mask of desperation, his street-tough bravado now a jagged edge. "You think you've won, old man?" He snarled, his voice dripping with Chicago alley grit, raw and vicious. "You're just a broke-down landlord who thinks he's Al Capone because he flipped some buildings. You're a joke, Sam, a nobody playing dress-up in a suit you can't afford to wear." His words were a Molotov cocktail, meant to burn me down in front of everyone. Guests gasped, some clutching their drinks, others whispering furiously, their phones still recording the chaos. My jaw clenched, the sting of his insults slicing through decades of pride. I'd built an empire from nothing, turned a greasy garage into a fortune, all for Emily. Now, this punk was spitting on it, and worse, on the love I'd poured into her life. The first shock hit like a lightning bolt. From the edge of the crowd, a new voice broke through, gruff, familiar, and unyielding. It was Frankie Delgado, my oldest friend from the South Side, a retired cop who'd stood by me through Clara's death and every hard year after. He pushed through the guests, his badge long gone, but his authority undeniable. "Shut your mouth, Caldwell," he roared, his voice thick with loyalty and rage. "Sam's worth 10 of you. You think you can scam Emily's money and walk away? I got buddies in the precinct who'd love to dig into your offshore accounts." The crowd's murmurs swelled, a wave of shock crashing over the room. Frankie's words weren't just a defense, they were a threat, hinting at evidence I hadn't known. He'd gathered a paper trail of Nathan's shady deals, millions funneled through shell companies, all to betray Emily. My heart lurched, torn between gratitude for Frankie's loyalty and the fresh wound of betrayal. Nathan hadn't just planned to steal from Emily. He'd built a machine to do it, a network of lies I'd been too trusting to see. My mind flashed to late nights in my office, signing deals to secure her future, only to learn now that Nathan had been siphoning funds through Vanessa's legal connections. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated heist, a multi-million-dollar stab in the back. Inside, I was screaming, wanting to drag Nathan across the marble and demand answers, but I stayed still, my face a stone wall. Losing control would push Emily further into his lies, and I couldn't risk that. My chest ached with the question. How had I let this snake into our lives? Blind to the venom he'd spread. Then came the second shock, a betrayal that cut deeper. Lillian Caldwell, Nathan's mother, rose from her seat, her diamond earrings glinting like daggers. "This is absurd," she hissed, her voice icy but laced with the same street venom as her son. "Samuel, you're embarrassing yourself, dragging your daughter into this low-life drama. You're nothing but a glorified slumlord, and you dare accuse my son of theft. Pathetic." Her words were a public execution, painting me as a fraud in front of Chicago's elite. But the real knife came when she turned to Emily, her tone softening into poison. "Sweetheart, don't let your father's jealousy ruin your future. Nathan's offering you the world, millions, status, a life you deserve." The crowd leaned in, some nodding, others frowning, as Lillian revealed her role in the scheme. She'd known about Nathan's plan to drain Emily's trust fund and had endorsed it, seeing me as a barrier to their social climb. The betrayal seared my soul, a fire that threatened to consume me. Lillian had dined at my table, toasted my success, all while plotting with her son to rob my daughter blind. I'd trusted her as family, believed her smiles were genuine, but now I saw the truth. She was a vulture, circling my fortune. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the urge to shatter her lies. Yet, I stood frozen, torn between the father who wanted to protect Emily's heart and the warrior who wanted to fight. What would Clara think, seeing me humiliated by those I'd welcomed into our lives. My throat tightened, the weight of her memory anchoring me to restraint. The third shock exploded from an unexpected corner. Sarah Kim, Emily's college roommate and a quiet, neutral figure who'd helped plan the wedding, stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "I can't keep this quiet anymore," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "Nathan met with a lawyer last week, offered me $100,000 to forge documents, making it look like Emily agreed to transfer her trust fund to him. I said no, but he laughed, said it didn't matter because Sam's too old to keep up." The room erupted, guests shouting, some standing, as the scandal spiraled. Sarah's eyes met mine, filled with regret for her silence. "I should have told you, Sam. I was scared." Her confession was a lifeline, proof that the truth was breaking through. But it also deepened the wound another person Nathan had tried to corrupt, another layer of his betrayal. Nathan's bravado collapsed, his voice shrill. "You're all liars. This is a setup," he screamed, pointing at Sarah, then me. "You're just a broke-ass fossil, Sam, trying to play hero to save face." But the crowd wasn't listening. Phones flashed, recording every word, as Vanessa tried to intervene, her voice sharp. "Let's calm down, everyone. This is Emily's day, not a circus." But her words fell flat, drowned by the crowd's outrage. Emily's sobs grew louder, her hands clutching mine, and I felt her world crumbling. I wanted to scream at Nathan, to expose every lie, but I held back, my voice low. "You've shown who you are, Nathan, and it's not a man my daughter deserves." Inside, I was a storm grief for Emily's pain, fury at Nathan's greed, and a gnawing fear that she might still love him despite everything. Frankie stood by me, his presence a rock, while Lillian's betrayal and Sarah's confession swirled like a tornado. The ballroom was no longer a celebration but a battlefield, each revelation a grenade tearing through Nathan's lies. Emily looked up at me, her eyes raw with betrayal, and I saw the little girl who'd trusted me to fix everything. I whispered, "You're not alone, sweetheart." But inside, I was breaking. How could I save her from a love that had cost her millions, and her heart? The truth was my weapon, but the war was far from won, and I stood ready, a father battered but unbowed, facing a storm that would test us both. The ballroom's chaos lingered in my bones as I stepped out into the Chicago night, Emily's hand still warm in mine, her tears a silent echo of the storm we'd just escaped. The Drake Hotel's golden glow faded behind us, replaced by the city's raw pulse, neon signs buzzing, taxis honking, and the distant wail of a siren cutting through the spring chill. My suit, creased from the fall, felt like armor now, heavy but unbreakable. Inside, I was a maelstrom of grief and fury, the weight of Nathan's betrayal, a plot to steal $5 million from Emily's trust fund, crushing my chest. Every step away from that gilded cage was a step toward truth, but my heart wrestled with a deeper wound. How could I shield my daughter from a love that had turned venomous, when part of her might still cling to it? The city's lights flickered like stars, but they offered no answers. Only the cold truth that this fight was far from over. Back at my South Side home, the old brownstone creaked under the weight of its own history. I sat in the living room, the tick of Clara's old clock slicing through the silence. Emily had gone to her old bedroom, curled up under a quilt I'd sewn for her when she was 10. Her sobs had quieted, but I knew the pain was still raw, a wound carved by Nathan's lies. My hands, scarred from years of wrench-turning and deal-making, gripped the armrests, trembling with the urge to smash anything to release the rage. Nathan's voice replayed in my mind, his street-bred venom from the wedding still burning. "You're a nobody, Sam, a washed-up landlord in a cheap suit." But it wasn't just his words. It was the conspiracy, Vanessa, Lillian, and now new faces in their web that made my blood boil. I'd built a fortune for Emily, only to see it targeted by vultures who saw her as a prize, not a person. The first shock came at midnight, a pounding at my door that rattled the frame. I opened it to find Nathan, his polished veneer gone, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You think you can ruin me, you old bastard?" He spat, his voice pure Chicago street, rough and unfiltered. "You're just a South Side wannabe who got lucky with some condos. You want to play hero? I'll burn your whole world down, starting with Emily's heart." His threat was a blade, slicing through the quiet of my home. He stepped closer, reeking of whiskey and cologne, his finger jabbing at my chest. "I've got dirt on you, Sam. Tax deals, shady permits, one call to the right people, and your empire's dust." My heart pounded not from fear but from the audacity of his lies. I'd heard whispers of my permits being questioned, But now I saw it Nathan had been digging, planting seeds to frame me as a crook to discredit my warnings about him. The betrayal deepened, a second shock hitting like a freight train. Standing behind Nathan was Marcus Tate, my former business partner, a man I'd trusted with my real estate deals for years. His suit was crisp, but his eyes were cold, calculating. "Sam, you should have stayed quiet," he said, his voice smooth but venomous. "Nathan offered me a cut $2 million to help him push you out of Emily's trust fund. You're too old to keep up, man." My stomach churned. Marcus, who'd shared beers with me in this very house, who'd promised to protect my legacy, had sold me out. He'd been part of Nathan's scheme, falsifying documents to make it look like I'd mismanaged Emily's funds, setting me up to lose everything. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was a knife in the back from a man I'd called a brother, a wound that bled trust. My mind spun, torn between rage and despair. I'd fought for every dollar, every building, to give Emily a future, only to find my closest ally had turned traitor. My hands clenched, itching to lash out, but I saw Clara's photo on the mantel, her smile steady and warm. What would she say? Fight with fists or with truth? My heart screamed for vengeance, but my daughter's face, pale and broken, kept me grounded. If I lost control, Nathan and Marcus would win, painting me as the villain to drive a wedge between me and Emily. The internal struggle was a fire, burning away my pride, leaving only a father's love and a vow to protect her, no matter the cost. The third shock came from an unexpected corner, a flicker of hope in the darkness. My neighbor, Carla Jones, a no-nonsense nurse who'd lived next door for decades, appeared at the porch, her face lit with fury. "I heard everything, Sam," she said, her voice sharp but loyal. "Nathan was bragging at the bar last night, said he'd paid off a city official $100,000 to dig up dirt on your business. I recorded it." She held up her phone, her hands steady despite the tremble in her voice. The crowd outside, neighbors drawn by the commotion, murmured, their loyalty to me a wall against Nathan's lies. Carla's recording played, Nathan's voice slurring. "Sam's done. Once we pin the tax fraud on him, Emily's money's mine." The neighbors gasped, their phones out, spreading the scandal like wildfire. Carla's eyes met mine, filled with the fierce protectiveness of someone who'd seen me rebuild after Clara's death. Nathan's bravado cracked, his face paling as he realized the tide was turning. "You're all full of it," he screamed, his street venom faltering. "You think some nurse's recording means anything? I'll sue you all." But Marcus stepped back, his confidence wavering, sensing the crowd's shift. My heart pounded, a mix of gratitude for Carla's loyalty and the crushing weight of Marcus's betrayal. I'd trusted him with my empire, shared my dreams, only to learn he'd sold me out for a cut of my daughter's future. The pain was visceral, like losing Clara all over again. But I stood tall, my voice low and steady. "You've dug your own grave, Nathan. And you, Marcus, your greed just buried you too." The drama escalated as Frankie burst through the crowd, his cop instincts flaring. "You're done, Caldwell," he roared, grabbing Nathan's arm. "I've got contacts who'll tear your accounts apart. You think you can frame Sam? We'll see who's in cuffs first." Marcus tried to slip away, but Carla blocked him, her nurse's glare unyielding. "Don't run, Tate. You're as guilty as he is." The neighbors cheered, their voices a chorus of South Side pride. But Emily's cry from the doorway cut through the noise. "Dad, what's happening?" she sobbed, her eyes wide with betrayal, not just at Nathan, but at the world she thought she knew. I pulled her close, my heart breaking for her pain. But inside, I was a furnace rage at Nathan's greed, grief for Marcus's betrayal, and a fierce resolve to protect my daughter. The Chicago night pulsed around us, a city of grit and glory, and I knew this battle was just the beginning, my love for Emily, the only light in the storm. The Chicago night pressed against the windows of my Southside brownstone, its neon glow, a faint pulse through the curtains. Emily's cries had faded to a fragile silence upstairs, but the air in my living room was thick with the aftershock of Nathan's venom and Marcus's betrayal. The clock's relentless tick mocked me, each second a reminder of the war raging outside and within. My hands, scarred from decades of labor and deal-making, gripped Clara's old quilt, the one I'd draped over Emily as a child. Nathan's words from the porch still burned in my ears, his Chicago street snarl calling me a South Side wannabe who'd lose everything. But it was Marcus's treachery, selling me out for $2 million, that cut deepest, a wound that bled trust and history. My heart was a battlefield, torn between shielding Emily from the pain and unleashing the fury that begged to tear Nathan's lies apart. Every brick of my empire, built for her, now felt like a target, and I wrestled with the fear that my daughter might still love the man who'd planned to rob her blind. The first shock came like a gunshot in the dark. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number lighting up the screen. "Check your email, Sam. You deserve to know." My pulse quickened, dread and curiosity twisting in my gut. I opened my laptop, the glow harsh against the dim room, and found an anonymous message with attachments, screenshots of bank transfers, emails between Nathan and a shady offshore broker, and a contract. The contract was a gut punch. Nathan had forged my signature, transferring a chunk of Emily's trust fund, $3 million, into a shell company he controlled. The emails revealed he'd been planning this for months, laughing about how I was too busy playing daddy to notice. My breath caught, rage surging like a tidal wave. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated heist, a violation of everything I'd built. My hands shook, itching to confront Nathan, but Clara's voice echoed in my mind. "Protect her, Sam, with truth, not fists." I sat frozen, torn between the urge to destroy him and the fear that exposing this now might break Emily's already fragile heart. Then came the second shock, a betrayal that carved deeper. The front door creaked open, and in walked Lena Harper, my longtime accountant, a woman I'd trusted with my finances since my first big deal. Her face was pale, her eyes avoiding mine. "Sam, I need to tell you something," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Nathan got to me, offered me $100,000 to cook the books, make it look like you'd been skimming from Emily's fund. I took the money." My world tilted. Lena, who'd sat at my table during Thanksgiving, who'd balanced my books through Clara's illness, had betrayed me. She'd altered records to frame me as a thief, paving the way for Nathan to seize control of Emily's wealth. My chest tightened, grief and fury colliding. I'd seen her as family, shared my dreams of securing Emily's future, only to learn she'd sold me out for a fraction of what I'd given her in trust. My mind screamed to lash out, but I saw Emily's silhouette in the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. I couldn't lose control, not now, not when she needed me steady. The third shock hit like a sledgehammer, a flicker of hope in the betrayal's shadow. My neighbor, Jamal Carter, a young barista who'd grown up on my block, burst through the door, his face lit with righteous anger. "Sam, I overheard Nathan at the coffee shop this morning," he said, his voice sharp with Southside grit. He was bragging to some suit about paying off a judge $50,000 to block any investigation into his accounts. "I got it on video." Jamal held up his phone, the grainy footage showing Nathan's smug grin as he boasted, "Sam's finished. Once the judge buries his complaints, Emily's money's ours." The neighbors outside, still gathered from the earlier chaos, erupted in shouts, their loyalty a wall against Nathan's schemes. Jamal's eyes met mine, fierce with the protectiveness of a kid who'd seen me as a father figure, handing out tools in my garage years ago. His video was a lifeline, proof that Nathan's web was unraveling, but it also deepened the wound, another layer of corruption, another betrayal of the city I'd called home. Nathan's voice from earlier rang in my head, raw and vicious. "I'll burn your world down, Sam." My heart pounded, a furnace of rage and sorrow. I'd fought for every dollar, every building, to give Emily a life free from want, only to find my accountant, my city, even my legacy twisted against me. The betrayal wasn't just the millions Nathan aimed to steal, it was the theft of my faith in those I'd trusted. My hands clenched the quilt, the fabric tearing under my grip. I wanted to storm into the night, drag Nathan from his penthouse, and make him choke on his lies. But Emily's quiet sob from the hallway stopped me. She was watching, her eyes pleading for the father who'd always fix things. My soul wrestled fight like the soldier I was, or stay the anchor she needed. Clara's memory held me back, her smile a reminder of the vow I'd made to protect, not destroy. The drama escalated as Nathan's car screeched back into the street, his voice bellowing through an open window. "You're done, Sam, you hear me? A washed-up nobody who can't even keep his kid in line." His street-tough taunt was a desperate last strike, but it lit a fire in the crowd. Frankie charged forward, his cop instincts flaring. "You're the one done, Caldwell. My boys at the precinct are already pulling your bank records." Lena tried to slip away, guilt written across her face, but Carla blocked her, her nurse's glare unyielding. "You don't get to run, Harper. You broke Sam's trust, same as him." The neighbors roared, their Southside pride a tidal wave, but Emily's voice cut through, small and broken. "Dad, is it true? Did everyone betray us?" Her question was a knife, twisting in my heart. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Not everyone, sweetheart. Not me, Ems." Inside, I was crumbling grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's greed, and a bone-deep pain for Lena's betrayal. Jamal stood by me, his video a weapon, while Carla's fierce loyalty anchored the crowd. The Chicago night pulsed outside, raw and unforgiving, its neon lights reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved hard. I looked at Emily, her face a mirror of Clara's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's schemes, Lena's treachery, Marcus's sellout, they were a storm. But I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart wasn't over, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my blade, cutting through the lies to bring her home. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just drop a quick comment below to share how you feel. It only takes a few seconds, but your words give me the motivation and inspiration to make every chapter more thrilling and engaging. Go ahead, let me know what's on your mind. And now, let's dive back into the story. The Chicago dawn broke gray and heavy, casting a dull light through the brownstone's windows, where the ghosts of last night's confrontation still lingered. Emily slept upstairs, her breathing soft but uneven, a fragile thread holding her together after Nathan's venom and the betrayals of Lena and Marcus tore through our world. The old clock's tick was a hammer in my chest, each beat a reminder of the empire I'd built for her, now a target for vultures aiming to steal millions. My hands, rough from years of labor and deal-making, clutched a cold coffee mug, the weight of Clara's memory anchoring me against the storm inside. Nathan's street-tough taunts, a washed-up nobody, and Lena's confession of cooking my books for $100,000 burned like acid. My heart wrestled with a father's love and a soldier's rage, torn between shielding Emily's fragile hope and crushing the liars who'd preyed on her trust. The city outside hummed with life, but in this house, it felt like a battlefield, and I was bracing for the next blow. The first shock came with the morning paper, left on my porch like a bomb wrapped in newsprint. A headline screamed across the local section, "South Side tycoon embroiled in tax scandal." My stomach dropped as I read the lies accusations that I'd evaded taxes on my real estate deals, orchestrated by an anonymous source. The article hinted at forged documents, pointing to a $7 million discrepancy in my accounts. My pulse raced, recognizing Nathan's handiwork, amplified by Lena's betrayal and Marcus's greed. This wasn't just a smear, it was a public execution, designed to ruin my name and clear the path for Nathan to seize Emily's trust fund. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the urge to storm his penthouse and choke the truth out of him. Yet Clara's voice whispered in my mind, steady and calm. "Fight smart, Sam." My soul churned. How could I protect Emily when the city I'd helped build was now turning on me, painting me as a crook? The second shock hit like a blade in the dark. My phone rang, and it was Diane Miller, my lawyer for decades, her voice tight with panic. "Sam, I found something," she said, barely above a whisper. "Nathan bribed my assistant, Corey, with $200,000 to leak your private contracts to the press. Corey's been feeding Nathan your financial records for months." My world tilted again. Diane, who'd stood by me through every deal, was clean. But Corey, a kid I'd mentored, who'd eaten at my table, was another traitor. He'd sold my secrets, helping Nathan craft the tax scandal to bury me. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like barbed wire. I'd trusted Corey like a son, paid for his night classes, only to learn he'd stabbed me in the back for a payout. My mind screamed to confront him, to demand why, but Emily's footsteps on the stairs stopped me. Her eyes, red from crying, begged for stability. I couldn't break, not when she needed me whole. The third shock came from an unexpected ally, a flicker of light in the betrayal's shadow. Rosa Martinez, a bodega owner from my block who'd known Emily since she was a kid, knocked on my door, her face fierce with Southside grit. "Sam, I got something you need to hear," she said, holding up a USB drive. "Caught Nathan on my store's security cam last week, meeting some guy in a suit. He was bragging about paying off a reporter $50,000 to plant that tax story." I saved the footage. Rosa's voice trembled with loyalty, her eyes burning with the same protectiveness she'd shown when she'd slipped Emily candy as a child. The footage played on my laptop, Nathan's voice clear and smug. "Sam's done, man. Once the papers call him a crook, Emily's money's mine, and no one will blink." My neighbors, gathered outside, roared with anger, their phones out, ready to spread Rosa's evidence. Her loyalty was a lifeline, but it deepened the wound Nathan's web had spread to the press, tainting the city I'd called home. Nathan's earlier taunts echoed, raw and vicious. "You're finished, Sam. A nobody who can't keep up." My heart pounded, a furnace of rage and sorrow. I'd poured my life into this city, built towers from nothing, only to see my name dragged through the mud by a punk who saw my daughter as a cash machine. The betrayal wasn't just the millions he aimed to steal. It was the theft of my legacy, my faith in the people I'd trusted. My hands gripped the mug so hard it cracked, coffee spilling like blood. I wanted to march to the newsroom, expose Nathan's lies, and burn his world down. But Emily's voice, small and broken, cut through. "Dad, is it true? Are you in trouble?" Her question was a knife, twisting in my soul. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. "It's lies, sweetheart. I'll fix this." The drama surged as Nathan's car roared up again, his voice bellowing from the street. "You're a dead man, Sam. A broke ass has. Ben who can't save his own skin." His Chicago street venom was a desperate howl, but it ignited the crowd. Frankie charged out, his retired cop instincts blazing. "You're the one finished, Caldwell. My precinct buddies are pulling your bribes apart." Corey tried to slip away, his face pale with guilt, but Rosa blocked him, her bodega owner glare unyielding. "You betrayed Sam, Corey. You don't get to hide." The neighbors cheered, their South Side pride a tidal wave, but Emily's sob from the doorway pierced me. "Dad, why does everyone hate us?" Her words shattered my heart, a reminder of the world she was losing. I held her tight, my voice a low growl. "They don't hate us, Emily. They're scared of the truth." Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's pain, fury at Nathan's schemes, and a bone-deep ache for Corey's betrayal. Rosa stood by me, her USB drive a weapon, while Frankie's loyalty anchored the crowd. The Chicago morning pulsed outside, raw and relentless, its gray light reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved deep. I looked at Emily, her face a mirror of Clara's, and felt the weight of my vow to protect her. Nathan's bribes, Corey's treachery, the press's lies, they were a storm. But I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's future was escalating, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my sword, cutting through the darkness to bring her home. The Chicago morning hung heavy, its gray light seeping through the brownstone's windows, casting long shadows across the living room where Clara's clock ticked like a heartbeat. Emily's fragile silence upstairs was a weight on my soul, her trust shattered by Nathan's schemes to steal millions, and the betrayals of Lena, Marcus, and Corey. My hands, calloused from years of building an empire, clutched the cracked coffee mug, its jagged edge a mirror of my heart torn between a father's love and a soldier's fury. Nathan's street venom from the night before, a dead man, a broke ass, has been echoed in my skull, each word a fresh cut. The tax scandal in the paper, the forged contracts, the bribe judge, all part of his plan to ruin me and claim Emily's fortune. My chest burned with the urge to hunt him down, to make him pay for every lie. But Emily's tear-streaked face anchored me. How could I protect her when the city I'd poured my life into was turning against me, and her heart still wavered for a man who saw her as a prize? The fight was no longer just for her money, it was for her soul, and I stood on the edge of a precipice, bracing for the next blow. The first shock came with a knock at the door, sharp and urgent, like a gavel slamming down. It was Vanessa, Nathan's cousin, her attorney's polish, replaced by a raw, desperate edge. "You're pathetic, Sam," she spat, her voice dripping with Chicago street venom, all pretense gone. "Think you're some big-shot savior? You're just a washed-up thug in a fancy suit clinging to a dead wife's memory while your daughter picks a real man." Her words were a blade, meant to gut me in my own home. She stepped closer, her heels clicking like gunfire on the hardwood. "Nathan's got this city in his pocket. Cops, reporters, judges. You're done, old man, and Emily's too dumb to see it." My blood boiled. Her taunts a reminder of the conspiracy she'd helped weave, a multi-million-dollar heist to strip Emily's trust fund and frame me as a crook. My hands clenched, itching to shove her out, but Clara's voice whispered, "Stay steady, Sam." My heart wrestled, explode in rage, or hold the line for Emily. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal, once a smiling ally at my table, was a fire in my veins, but I stood still, knowing one wrong move could push Emily further into Nathan's lies. The second shock hit like a thunderclap. From the hallway, a voice broke through, low, trembling, but resolute. It was Pastor James Ellis, the minister who'd baptized Emily and buried Clara, a man whose quiet faith had been my anchor through grief. "I heard what you said, Vanessa," he said, stepping into the light, his Bible clutched tight. "Nathan came to me last week, offered me $100,000 to publicly back his story, to say Sam was a fraud who'd cheated the church. I refused, but he laughed, said it didn't matter because Sam's name is mud now." The room spun, my breath catching. Pastor James, who'd prayed with me through sleepless nights, had been targeted by Nathan's greed, his sacred trust twisted into a weapon. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was a desecration of the faith I'd leaned on, a stab from a man who dared to sully Clara's memory. My soul screamed to confront Nathan, to tear his world apart, but Emily's soft gasp from the stairs stopped me. Her eyes, wide with shock, begged for something solid to hold on to. I couldn't break, not when she needed me to be her rock. The third shock came like a spark in the darkness, a flicker of hope amid the wreckage. My phone buzzed, a call from Tony Rivera, a Southside journalist who'd covered my rise from mechanic to tycoon. His voice was urgent, laced with loyalty. "Sam, I dug into Nathan's trail," he said. "Found proof he paid a city councilman $75,000 to push that tax scandal story. I've got emails, bank records, and a witness, a clerk, who saw Nathan hand over the cash. I'm publishing it tonight." Tony's words were a lifeline, his evidence a weapon to expose Nathan's corruption. He'd grown up on my block, knew the weight of my sacrifices, and his fierce commitment to the truth was a beacon. But it also deepened the wound Nathan's reach had infected the city's core, bribing officials to destroy my name. The neighbors outside, still gathered, cheered as I relayed Tony's call, their Southside pride a roar against the lies. Yet Emily's trembling hand on my arm pulled me back, her voice a whisper. "Dad, is this ever going to stop?" Vanessa's laughter cut through, sharp and cruel. "You're finished, Sam. A broke-down nobody who thinks he's a king." Her street venom was a desperate claw, but it ignited the room. Frankie surged forward, his cop instincts blazing. "You're the one done, Pierce. Tony's story's gonna bury you and Nathan." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've shamed yourself, Vanessa, turning on a man who's only ever fought for his daughter." The neighbors roared, their voices a tidal wave, but Emily's sob pierced my heart. "Dad, I trusted him," she whispered, her words a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You trusted love, sweetheart. That's not weakness, it's strength." Oh. Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's broken dreams, fury at Nathan's corruption, and a bone-deep ache for Pastor James's betrayal by association. Vanessa's conspiracy, Corey's treachery, the councilman's bribe, they were a storm, tearing at the life I'd built. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the urge to burn Nathan's world to ash. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile a vow to fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why the city I'd helped build had turned on me. But Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes kept me grounded. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal, once a trusted ally, was a wound that bled faith, but Tony's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago morning pulsed outside, its gray light a mirror of my scars, a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. I looked at Emily, her face a fragile echo of her mother's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's bribes, Vanessa's venom, the city's lies, they were a hurricane. But I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart was far from over, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my blade, cutting through the lies to bring her home. The Chicago night draped itself over the brownstone, its moonlit shadows dancing across the walls, heavy with the weight of betrayal. Emily's quiet breathing upstairs was a fragile anchor, but the storm of Nathan's schemes, his plan to steal millions, the forged contracts, the bribed officials raged in my chest. The clock's relentless tick was a blade, slicing through the silence, each second a reminder of the empire I'd built for her, now crumbling under lies. My hands, scarred from years of grit and grind, clutched the edge of Clara's old armchair, its worn fabric a tether to the past. Vanessa's venom from the morning, a washed-up thug in a fancy suit, and the betrayals of Corey, Lena, and Pastor James's near seduction by Nathan's bribes burned like wildfire. My heart was a war zone, torn between shielding Emily's fading trust and unleashing the soldier's fury that begged to burn Nathan's world to ash. The city outside pulsed with its raw, unyielding rhythm, but in this house, I stood alone, bracing for the next blow, knowing the fight for my daughter's soul was far from over. The first shock came like a siren in the dark, piercing the quiet. My phone lit up with a voicemail from an unknown number, the voice unmistakable Nathan, his Chicago street snarl dripping with venom. "You're a dead man walking, Sam," he hissed, raw and vicious. "Think you're some Southside king? You're just a broke-ass relic, and I'm gonna make sure Emily sees you for the loser you are. I've got your dirty laundry, 8 million in shady deals, and I'm airing it all out." My blood froze. The message wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war, hinting at a new lie, a fabricated paper trail accusing me of laundering millions through my properties. My hands shook, rage surging like a tidal wave. Nathan wasn't just after Emily's trust fund. He was rewriting my legacy to bury me. My mind screamed to hunt him down, to make him choke on his lies. But Clara's memory flashed her calm eyes urging restraint. My heart wrestled. Protect Emily's fragile faith in me, or unleash the beast within? The pain of Nathan's audacity, twisting my life's work into a scandal, was a knife in my gut. But I held still, knowing one wrong move could shatter her. The second shock hit like a brick through a window. The front door slammed open, and in stormed Connor Hayes, Nathan's best man, his slick hedge fund bro swagger replaced by a desperate, predatory edge. "You're done, Sam," he sneered, his voice pure Chicago alley grit. "You think you can play hero? You're just a washed-up grease monkey who got lucky with some skyscrapers. Nathan's got a video shows you bribing a city inspector, 10 million in dirty money. You're going down, and Emily's gonna hate you for it." My stomach churned, the lie a fresh wound. Connor, who'd toasted me at the engagement party, had been in on Nathan's scheme, planting fake evidence to frame me as a criminal. The video was a fabrication. I'd never bribed anyone, but its existence was a blade, designed to turn Emily against me. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like a storm. I'd trusted Connor, shared stories of my youth, only to learn he'd sold me out for a cut of Nathan's millions. My soul screamed to slam him against the wall. But Emily's shadow in the hallway stopped me, her eyes wide with fear. I couldn't break, not when she needed me steady. The third shock came like a spark in the darkness, a glimmer of hope amid the wreckage. My neighbor, Luis Alvarez, a retired firefighter who'd known me since the garage days, burst through the door, his face alight with Southside fire. "Sam, I got something," he said, holding up a burner phone. "Found this in the alley behind my station." Nathan dropped it. "It's got texts, man, bragging about paying a hacker $75,000 to plant that fake video on your name." Luis's voice was steady, his loyalty a rock, forged from years of watching me rebuild after Clara's death. The texts flashed on the screen, Nathan's words cold and smug. "Sam's finished. The video will make him look like a crook, and Emily's mine." The neighbors outside, still gathered, roared with anger, their phones out, spreading Luis's find like wildfire. His evidence was a lifeline, proof that Nathan's lies were unraveling. But it deepened the wound another layer of betrayal, another attempt to destroy my name in the city I'd called home. Connor's laughter cut through, sharp and cruel. "You're toast, Sam. A nobody who thinks he's untouchable." His street venom was a desperate claw, but it ignited the room. Frankie charged forward, his retired cop instincts flaring. "You're the one burned, Hayes. Luis's phone's going straight to the feds." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've defiled trust, Connor, just like Nathan. Sam's fought for his daughter, while you've sold your soul." The neighbors cheered, their South Side pride a tidal wave. But Emily's sob from the stairs pierced my heart. "Dad, how many more lies?" she whispered, her voice a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "They're running out of lies, sweetheart. We've got the truth." Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's corruption, and a bone-deep ache for Connor's betrayal. I'd welcomed him into my home, seen him as a friend, only to learn he'd been plotting with Nathan to ruin me. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile a vow to fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why those I'd trusted had turned on me, but Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes, kept me grounded. The pain of Connor's treachery, once a laughing ally, was a wound that bled faith. But Luis's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago night pulsed outside, its moonlight reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. I looked at Emily, her face a fragile echo of her mother's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's fake video, Connor's venom, the hacker's lies, they were a hurricane. But I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart was escalating, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my sword, cutting through the darkness to bring her home. The Chicago dawn crept through the brownstone's windows, its pale light slicing through the heavy air, illuminating the scars of a night that refused to end. Emily's quiet sobs had faded upstairs, but her pain lingered in the house like a ghost, a reminder of Nathan's schemes to steal millions and the betrayals that had torn through our lives. Lena, Marcus, Corey, and now Connor's fabricated video. My hands, weathered from years of building an empire, gripped the armrests of Clara's old armchair, its faded fabric a fragile tether to the past. The clock's relentless tick was a drumbeat, each second pounding the weight of my vow to protect Emily. Nathan's street venom from the night before a broke-ass relic, and Connor's lie about a $10 million bribery video burned in my chest, a fire fed by every betrayal. My heart was a battlefield, torn between shielding Emily's crumbling trust and unleashing the soldier's rage that begged to crush Nathan's lies. The city outside pulsed with its raw, unforgiving rhythm, but in this house, I stood on the edge of a storm, bracing for the next blow, knowing the fight for my daughter's soul was a war I couldn't lose. The first shock came like a bullet through the silence, sharp and shattering. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, the message chilling. "You're finished, Sam. Check the news." I flipped on the television, and there it was, a breaking report on a local channel, accusing me of funneling $8 million through illegal property deals, backed by leaked footage of me handing cash to a city official. My blood ran cold. The footage was a deepfake, my face clumsily stitched onto another man's body. But the damage was done. Chicago's morning talk shows were already buzzing, calling me a South Side crook. Nathan's handiwork was clear, a new layer of his conspiracy to ruin me and seize Emily's trust fund. My hands trembled, rage surging like a wildfire. I wanted to storm the news station, demand they retract the lie. But Clara's memory flashed her steady gaze, urging patience. My soul wrestled. Expose Nathan's fraud, or protect Emily from the public's judgment? The pain of this new betrayal, painting me as a criminal in the city I'd helped build, was a wound that bled pride. But I held still, knowing one misstep could break her heart further. The second shock hit like a sledgehammer, deepening the betrayal. The doorbell rang, and there stood Evelyn Brooks, my longtime business associate who'd brokered my biggest real estate deals. Her face was ashen, her eyes avoiding mine. "Sam, I have to confess," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Nathan offered me $300,000 to plant fake invoices in your company's records, making it look like you'd laundered millions. I did it." My world tilted, the air sucked out of the room. Evelyn, who'd stood beside me at ribbon cuttings, who'd celebrated my daughter's graduation with us, had sold me out. She'd falsified documents to bolster Nathan's deepfake, setting me up as a criminal mastermind. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like a storm. I'd trusted her with my empire, shared my dreams of securing Emily's future, only to learn she'd betrayed me for a paycheck. My mind screamed to confront her, to demand why, but Emily's soft footsteps on the stairs stopped me. Her eyes, red and hollow, begged for something solid. I couldn't break, not when she needed me whole. The third shock came, like a beacon in the darkness, a spark of hope amid the wreckage. My phone rang, and it was Mia Torres, a young paralegal from Diane's firm who'd grown up on my block, her voice fierce with Southside loyalty. "Sam, I found something," she said, her words sharp and urgent. "Nathan paid a tech guy $100,000 to create that deepfake video. I've got his emails proof he hired a hacker to frame you. I'm sending them to Tony for his story." Mia's evidence was a lifeline, her loyalty, a rock forged from years of watching me rebuild after Clara's death. The emails flashed on my screen, Nathan's words cold and smug. "Sam's done. The video's perfect. Emily'll ditch him when she sees it." The neighbors outside, still gathered, cheered as I shared Mia's find, their phones out, spreading the truth like wildfire. Her courage was a weapon, but it deepened the wound Nathan's reach had infected my city, turning even technology against me. Emily's voice, small and broken, cut through. "Dad, is this ever going to end?" Evelyn's voice broke the silence, laced with desperation but no remorse. "You're finished, Sam," she spat, her Chicago street venom a pale imitation of Nathan's, a washed-up nobody who thinks he's a tycoon. "Nathan's got you beat, and Emily's too weak to see it." Her words were a blade, meant to bury me in my own home. Frankie surged forward, his retired cop instincts blazing. "You're the one done, Brooks. Mia's emails are going straight to the press." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've betrayed a good man, Evelyn, for nothing but greed." The neighbors roared, their South Side pride a tidal wave, but Emily's sob pierced my heart. "Dad, I believed in them," she whispered, her voice a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You believed in love, sweetheart. That's not a flaw, it's your strength." And inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's lies, and a bone-deep ache for Evelyn's betrayal. I trusted her with my legacy, celebrated her as a partner, only to learn she'd sold me out for $300,000. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile a vow to fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why those I'd lifted up had turned on me. But Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes, kept me grounded. The pain of Evelyn's treachery, once a trusted ally, was a wound that bled faith. But Mia's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago dawn pulsed outside, its pale light reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. I looked at Emily, her face a fragile echo of her mother's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's deepfake, Evelyn's invoices, the hacker's lies, they were a hurricane, but I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart was escalating, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my sword, cutting through the darkness to bring her home. The Chicago morning bled into noon, its pale light now harsh through the brownstone's windows, illuminating the cracks in my world. Emily sat across from me at the kitchen table, her eyes hollow, her hands twisting a frayed napkin, a relic of Clara's that held memories of better days. The weight of Nathan's schemes, his deepfake video, the bribed officials, the $8 million smear hung like smoke, choking the air. My hands, scarred from decades of building an empire, rested on the table, steady but burning with the fire of betrayal. Evelyn's confession, Connor's lies, and the city's turning against me seared my soul, each a dagger in the legacy I'd fought for. Nathan's venom, a washed-up nobody, echoed in my mind, a taunt that fueled my rage, but also my fear. What if Emily still loved him, despite the millions he'd tried to steal? My heart was a furnace, torn between protecting her fragile hope and unleashing the soldier within to burn his lies to ash. The city outside roared with its relentless pulse, but in this house, we were a battlefield, and I braced for the next strike, knowing the war for my daughter's soul was reaching its breaking point. The first shock came like a thunderbolt, shattering the fragile quiet. My phone buzzed with a notification, a viral social media post from a local influencer, accusing me of embezzling $10 million from my own charity foundation, backed by documents leaked by an anonymous source. My blood ran cold. The documents were fakes, forged with my signature, but they were spreading like wildfire, hashtags like #Southside Scam trending across Chicago's feeds. Nathan's hand was clear, another layer of his conspiracy to destroy my name and claim Emily's trust fund. My hands trembled, rage surging like a storm. I wanted to march to his penthouse, smash his phone, and force him to confess. But Clara's memory flashed her gentle voice, urging patience. My soul wrestled. Expose this lie and risk dragging Emily through more public shame, or hold steady and lose her to Nathan's manipulation? The pain of this new betrayal, turning my charity work into a scandal, was a wound that bled my pride, but I held still, knowing one wrong move could shatter her further. The second shock hit like a knife in the dark, deepening the betrayal. The doorbell rang, and there stood Victor Salazar, my old real estate mentor, a man who'd taught me the ropes when I was just a mechanic with big dreams. His face was heavy with guilt, his eyes avoiding mine. "Sam, I've got to come clean," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Nathan paid me $250,000 to backdate contracts, making it look like you'd funneled charity funds into offshore accounts. I did it." My world tilted, the air sucked out of the room. Victor, who'd stood by me at my first property closing, who'd toasted Emily's birth with Clara, had sold me out. He'd crafted the fake documents that fueled the social media storm, setting me up as a thief in the eyes of the city. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like a hurricane. I'd seen him as a father figure, shared my fears and dreams, only to learn he'd betrayed me for a paycheck. My mind screamed to confront him, to demand why, but Emily's quiet gasp from the table stopped me. Her eyes, wide with shock, begged for something to hold on to. I couldn't break, not when she needed me whole. The third shock came like a spark in the darkness, a flicker of hope amid the wreckage. My phone rang, and it was Angela Carter, a community organizer who'd worked with my charity for years, her voice sharp with Southside fire. "Sam, I've got proof," she said, her words urgent. "Nathan bribed a city auditor $80,000 to push that charity scam story. I've got recordings from a whistleblower in the auditor's office, catching Nathan on tape. Angela's evidence was a lifeline, her loyalty a rock forged from years of seeing me fund scholarships for kids on our block." The recording played, Nathan's voice cold and smug. "Sam's charity is a front. Once we pin $10 million on him, Emily's money's ours." The neighbors outside, still gathered, roared with anger, their phones out. spreading Angela's find like wildfire. Her courage was a weapon, but it deepened the wound. Nathan's reach had tainted even my charity, a beacon of hope for the South Side. Emily's voice, small and broken, cut through. "Dad, did I cause this?" Victor's laughter broke the silence, laced with desperation but no remorse. "You're done, Sam," he spat, his Chicago street venom a cruel echo of Nathan's, a washed-up dreamer who thinks he's a saint. "Nathan's got you beat, and Emily's too soft to see it." His words were a blade, meant to bury me in my own kitchen. Frankie surged forward, his retired cop instincts blazing. "You're the one finished, Salazar. Angela's recordings are going straight to the news." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've betrayed a man who lifted this community, Victor, for nothing but greed." The neighbors cheered, their South Side pride a tidal wave, but Emily's sob pierced my heart. "Dad, I trusted them all," she whispered, her voice a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You trusted hope, sweetheart. That's not a mistake, it's your heart." Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's lies, and a bone-deep ache for Victor's betrayal. I'd trusted him with my dreams, seen him as a mentor, only to learn he'd sold me out for $250,000. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile avowed a fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why those I'd lifted up had turned on me, but Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes, kept me grounded. The pain of Victor's treachery, once a guiding light, was a wound that bled faith, but Angela's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago noon pulsed outside, its harsh light reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. I looked at Emily, her face a fragile echo of her mother's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's fake charity scandal, Victor's forged contracts, the auditor's lies, they were a hurricane, but I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart was reaching its climax, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my sword, cutting through the darkness to bring her home. The Chicago noon burned through the brownstone's windows, its harsh light casting stark shadows across the kitchen, where Emily's frayed napkin lay crumpled, a silent testament to her broken trust. The air was thick with the residue of Nathan's schemes, his $10 million charity scam, the deepfake video, the bribed auditor, and the betrayals of Victor, Connor, Lena, and Corey, each a knife in my heart. My hands, weathered from decades of forging an empire, gripped the table's edge, the wood creaking under my rage. The clock's tick was a relentless pulse, echoing Nathan's venom, a washed-up dreamer, and Victor's confession of forging contracts for $250,000. My soul was a battlefield, torn between shielding Emily from the lies that threatened to consume her and unleashing the soldier's fury that begged to burn Nathan's world to ash. The city outside roared with its unyielding rhythm, but in this house, we were a powder keg, and I braced for the next explosion, knowing the war for my daughter's soul was at its breaking point. The first shock came like a grenade, shattering the fragile quiet. My phone buzzed with an alert, a live news broadcast from a Chicago station, now accusing me of orchestrating a $12 million Ponzi scheme through my real estate empire, backed by testimony from an unnamed whistleblower. My blood ran cold. The testimony was a lie, another fabrication by Nathan's hand, designed to paint me as a criminal mastermind and clear his path to Emily's trust fund. The broadcast showed grainy photos of me at old property deals, twisted to look like shady handoffs, with pundits calling me Chicago's fallen tycoon. My hands trembled, rage surging like a tsunami. I wanted to storm the station, rip the microphone from their hands, and scream the truth. But Clara's memory flashed her steady voice, urging restraint. My heart wrestled. Expose this lie and risk dragging Emily through more public humiliation, or hold steady and lose her to Nathan's manipulation? The pain of this new betrayal, turning my life's work into a scandal, was a wound that bled my legacy, but I held still, knowing one misstep could break her further. The second shock hit like a dagger in the dark, deepening the betrayal. The front door burst open, and in stormed Lillian Caldwell, Nathan's mother, her diamond-studded presence, a stark contrast to the South Side grit of my home. "You're a disgrace, Sam," she spat, her voice laced with Chicago street venom, cold and vicious. "Think you're some big-shot hero. You're just a low-life thug who stumbled into money, and now you're dragging Emily into your mess. Nathan's got proof 15 million in dirty deals, and he's going to make sure the whole city knows you're a fraud." Her words were a blade, meant to gut me in my own kitchen. She stepped closer, her eyes glinting with malice. Emily deserves better than a washed-up nobody like you. My stomach churned, the lie a fresh wound. Lillian, who'd sipped wine at my table, had been orchestrating Nathan's lies, planting false evidence to frame me as a criminal. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like a storm. I'd trusted her as family, shared my pride in Emily, only to learn she'd been plotting to destroy me for her son's gain. My mind screamed to throw her out, but Emily's quiet sob from the table stopped me. Her eyes, wide with shock, begged for something solid. I couldn't break, not when she needed me whole. The third shock came like a spark in the darkness, a flicker of hope amid the wreckage. My phone rang, and it was Javier Morales, a Southside private investigator who'd once worked security for my properties, his voice sharp with loyalty. "Sam, I got something big," he said, his words urgent. "Nathan paid a crooked accountant $150,000 to fabricate that Ponzi scheme story. I've got wiretaps, man, catching him bragging about it to Lillian." Javier's evidence was a lifeline, his loyalty a rock forged from years of seeing me fund community projects. The wiretap played, Nathan's voice cold and smug. "Sam's done. The Ponzi-Lyle bury him, and Emily's money's ours." The neighbors outside, still gathered, roared with anger, their phones out, spreading Javier's find like wildfire. His courage was a weapon, but it deepened the wound. Nathan's reach had tainted even my community work, turning my good deeds into a lie. Emily's voice, small and broken, cut through. "Dad, how did I let this happen?" Lillian's laughter sliced through, sharp and cruel. "You're finished, Sam, a broke-down nobody who thinks he's a legend." Her street venom was a desperate claw, but it ignited the room. Frankie surged forward, his retired cop instincts blazing. "You're the one done, Caldwell. Javier's wiretaps are going straight to the feds." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've betrayed a man who built this city up, Lillian, for nothing but greed." The neighbors cheered, their Southside pride a tidal wave, but Emily's sob pierced my heart. "Dad, I loved him," she whispered, her voice a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You loved a dream, sweetheart. That's not your fault, it's your heart." Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's lies, and a bone-deep ache for Lillian's betrayal. I'd welcomed her into my home, seen her as a mother figure for Emily, only to learn she'd been plotting with Nathan to ruin me for $15 million. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile a vow to fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why those I'd trusted had turned on me. But Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes, kept me grounded. The pain of Lillian's treachery, once a trusted ally, was a wound that bled faith. But Javier's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago noon pulsed outside, its harsh light reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. I looked at Emily, her face a fragile echo of her mother's, and felt the weight of my promise to protect her. Nathan's Ponzi scheme lie, Lillian's venom, the accountant's betrayal, they were a hurricane, but I was a soldier, battered but unbowed. The fight for Emily's heart was at its peak, and as the clock ticked on, I knew the truth would be my sword, cutting through the darkness to bring her home. The Chicago noon melted into dusk, the city's skyline glowing with a fiery orange that mirrored the storm raging in my chest. Emily sat beside me, her hands still clutching the frayed napkin, her eyes a mix of grief and dawning resolve. The weight of Nathan's schemes, his $12 million Ponzi scheme, the deepfake video, the bribed auditor, and the betrayals of Lillian, Victor, Connor, Lena, and Corey had torn our world apart. My hands, scarred from decades of forging an empire, rested on Clara's old table, steady but trembling with the fire of betrayal. Lillian's venom, a low-life thug, and the city's turn against me burned like acid. Each betrayal a wound in the legacy I'd fought for. My heart was a furnace, torn between shielding her fragile heart and unleashing the soldier's rage to burn Nathan's lies to ash. The city outside pulsed with its raw, unyielding rhythm, but in this house, we stood at the edge of a reckoning, and I braced for the final blow, knowing the war for my daughter's soul would end tonight. The first shock came like a lightning strike, splitting the dusk. My phone buzzed with a breaking news alert, a live press conference from City Hall, where a councilman was accusing me of orchestrating a $15 million fraud through my charity, backed by irrefutable evidence from a whistleblower. My blood ran cold. The evidence was another of Nathan's fabrications, a forged ledger linking my name to offshore accounts. The councilman's face flashed on the screen, smug and rehearsed, and I recognized him, a man Nathan had bragged about bribing for $75,000. My hands shook, rage surging like a wildfire. I wanted to storm City Hall, rip the ledger apart, and scream the truth, but Clara's memory flashed her calm eyes, urging patience. My heart wrestled. Expose this lie and drag Emily through more public shame, or hold steady and risk losing her to Nathan's web. The pain of this new betrayal, turning my charity into a criminal front, was a wound that bled my life's work, but I held still, knowing one misstep could shatter her further. The second shock hit like a blade in the dark, deepening the betrayal. The doorbell rang, and there stood Marcus Tate, my former business partner, his face twisted with desperation and defiance. "You're done, Sam," he spat, his Chicago street venom raw and vicious. "Think you're some Southside saint? You're just a washed-up hustler who got lucky. Nathan's got a dossier, 20 million in dirty deals, and he's gonna bury you so deep, Emily'll spit on your grave." His words were a dagger, meant to gut me in my own home. Marcus, who'd shared beers with me, who'd vowed to protect my legacy, revealed he'd been feeding Nathan insider details about my deals, crafting lies to frame me as a criminal mastermind. My chest burned, grief and fury twisting like a hurricane. I'd trusted him like a brother, shared my dreams for Emily, only to learn he'd sold me out for a cut of Nathan's millions. My mind screamed to slam him against the wall, but Emily's trembling hand on mine stopped me. Her eyes, wide with shock, begged for stability. I couldn't break knot when she needed me whole. The third shock came like a beacon in the darkness, a spark of hope amid the wreckage. My phone rang, and it was Elena Vasquez, a Southside librarian who'd run my charity's literacy programs, her voice fierce with loyalty. "Sam, I've got evidence," she said, her words sharp and urgent. "Nathan paid a hacker $100,000 to plant that fraud ledger. I've got screenshots of his chats, bragging about it to Marcus." Elena's evidence was a lifeline, her loyalty a rock forged from years of seeing me fund books for kids. The screenshots flashed on my screen, Nathan's words cold and smug. "Sam's finished. The ledger'll bury him, and Emily's money's ours." The neighbors outside still gathered, roared with anger, their phones out, spreading Elena's find like wildfire. Her courage was a weapon, but it deepened the wound Nathan's reach had tainted even my literacy programs, turning my good deeds into lies. Emily's voice, small and broken, cut through. "Dad, I thought I knew him." Marcus's laughter sliced through, sharp and cruel. "You're toast, Sam. A broke-down nobody who thinks he's a hero." His street venom was a desperate claw, but it ignited the room. Frankie surged forward, his retired cop instincts blazing. "You're the one done, Tate. Elena's screenshots are going to the feds." Pastor James stepped beside him, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've betrayed a man who lifted this city, Marcus, for nothing but greed." The neighbors cheered, their Southside pride a tidal wave, but Emily's sob pierced my heart. "Dad, I chose him," she whispered, her voice a dagger. I pulled her close, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You chose love, sweetheart. That's not a sin, it's your strength." Inside, I was fracturing grief for Emily's shattered world, fury at Nathan's lies, and a bone-deep ache for Marcus's betrayal. I'd trusted him with my empire, seen him as a brother, only to learn he'd sold me out for $20 million. My hands trembled, not from fear but from the urge to tear their lies apart. Yet Clara's memory held me, her smile a vow to fight with truth, not vengeance. I wanted to scream, to demand why those I'd lifted up had turned on me, but Emily's eyes, Clara's eyes, kept me grounded. The pain of Marcus's treachery, once a trusted ally, was a wound that bled faith, but Elena's evidence and Frankie's loyalty were anchors. The Chicago dusk pulsed outside, its fiery light reflecting the scars of a city that fought dirty but loved fierce. Unlike the original tale, where Emily walked away from her fiancé, here she stood frozen, her hand clutching the engagement ring. "Dad, I need to confront him," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. The room stilled, the neighbors' cheers fading. I nodded, my heart swelling with pride and fear. We drove to Nathan's penthouse, the city's neon lights blurring past. Inside, Nathan laughed, his venom raw. "You're nothing, Sam, a washed-up fool." But Emily stepped forward, her voice steady. "You're the fool, Nathan. I choose truth." She dropped the ring, its clatter echoing like a gavel. The neighbors outside erupted, their South Side pride a chorus of justice. This story carries a profound lesson about knowledge, the knowledge that trust is fragile but truth is unyielding. It teaches us the education of resilience, the education of standing firm against betrayal, the lesson of family, the knowledge of love's strength, and the education of fighting for what's right are universal. Through Emily's choice, we learn the lesson of self-worth, the knowledge that no amount of money, millions or more, can buy dignity. The education of loyalty, shown by Frankie, Elena, and the South Side, is a lesson in community, a knowledge that binds us in crisis. This education reminds us to hold fast to those who stand by us, a lesson in the power of truth. What did you feel watching this unfold? How does this tale of betrayal and redemption resonate with your life? Share your thoughts in the comments on our YouTube channel, RevengeX. Like, subscribe, and share to hear more gripping stories daily. Your heart's response fuels our knowledge of storytelling. Wishing you all health, and health, a joyful life, and peace every day. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.